last year, over a third of Stanford and Harvard's deferred admits worked with a coach on Leland. So we've had a lot of success. You can see a lot of the different profiles down below. We've done a great job placing students at all of the top programs such as Stanford, Harvard, Wharton, et cetera. So really excited to help you apply to these programs as well. So let's get started. So here's just quick event logistics. If you have questions, please feel free to ask them in the chat and we will try to incorporate them into our discussion. Please be respectful and, as mentioned, sign up for Leland. And then here's a quick agenda. We'll go through a quick introduction. John, our CEO, will do a quick Leland overview. I'll talk a little bit about deferred MBA programs and what they're all about. And then we'll have our expert panel where we'll get into specific tips and tricks on how to navigate the different parts of the application process. So we'll go into introductions. So I'm Andrew. I run growth here at Leland, and I'm also a deferred admit at Sloan and Kellogg, ultimately accepted at Kellogg and currently in the deferral period. You've heard me mention Erica's name. She'll be in the chat dropping different links and things, and we'll also be there to answer some questions. And then we also have John, our CEO and founder, on the call. He is a dual admit to the Stanford GSB and HBS through the deferred process and has since graduated from Stanford. And he'll be giving us the Leland overview here in a minute. And then we have some amazing panelists. I'm going to turn it over to them to introduce themselves. So I'm going to kick it over to you, Amy, and then we'll go to you, Ben, and then Maya, you'll round us off.
Hi, everybody. My name is Amy, and I am a former Wharton staff member. I worked at the Wharton School for 12 years, focused on admissions and program management. But I left Wharton in 2020, and I have been an admissions coach since then. It's been a really great experience. I really love my time in doing the admissions coaching. It's for me, it's been really fun to be able to use all the things that I learned in my time at Wharton during those many years, and be able to use that to help folks, achieve their dream of being admitted to some of the top schools. I also really like that. What I love about admissions consulting is that I'm also able to dip back into my prior career before Wharton, which was in journalism. So I was a copy editor, and being an admissions coach allows me to really marry those two parts of my past. So looking forward to having a great conversation today.
Awesome. Thanks, Amy. Hi, everybody. My name is Ben. I went to Stanford. I'm class of 21. I've been working with Leland, I think, for almost coming up on a year now. But just my quick skinny in terms of background is I worked for the Chicago Mayor's Office and former McKinsey. Did a lot of speech writing, do a lot of writing on my own, and did a lot of writing when I was at Stanford. What I think is kind of nice is coming up this year. Like last year, helped a couple folks with the deferred process when going to Stanford, and now working with some folks that she actually referred. So it's been a nice full circle experience, and look forward to get to know all of you and see how we can work together.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Maya. I'm a current Rhodes Scholar doing an MPhil in economics at Oxford, so it's pretty late for me. I did my undergrad at Harvard in physics, and I worked at D. Shaw after graduating, and I applied to and was admitted to Harvard and Stanford and Wharton for deferred MBAs. Looking forward to getting to know all of you better.
Awesome. So as you can see, we have some amazing panelists. Thank you to each of you for joining the call today. And now we would love to get to know you. Where are you attending college, and what is your dream MBA program? If you don't mind throwing it into the chat. UC Irvine, Columbia, UT Austin, Penn, WashU, USC, UCLA, BYU, Virginia Tech. Cool. Oregon State. Awesome. Great to see all the different locations. Just saw Russia, which is awesome to see. Got a lot of people joining from a lot of different places, and a lot of people looking to target many of the top schools. So a lot of Harvard, a lot of Stanford, Columbia, and some of the other top programs. So we're going to talk about what it takes to get admitted to a lot of those programs. So really excited. So now, next on the agenda, we're going to talk through Leland. So I'm going to pass it over to John, our CEO, to give us a quick overview.
Awesome. Thanks for letting me jump in here. It's great to meet all of you, and some of you I've already met, but many of you I'm just meeting for the first time. Excited to be here with all of you. We've done a number of these deferred events. My background, I actually, as I mentioned, applied to the deferred programs several years ago, back when it was only HBS and GSB. So deferred MBA programs have been, a top love of mine since I went through that process. I also started a deferred MBA focused consulting firm before Leland. So it was a lot of the ideas that have now become Leland started with deferred MBA. So it's genuinely our bread and butter, and we're excited to help many of you with your applications this year. So just to kind of give you a sense for what Leland is, we have 250 plus education and career coaches on Leland. So we, of course, do deferred MBA coaching, but we also do consulting coaching or product management coaching or other types of coaching. We have tens of thousands of members in our community. We've raised $5 million from top venture funds, and we have really every top school and company represented by our amazing coaches. So it's quite an amazing community. 3 of these amazing coaches are here today with us. We're really excited to have them. Can you take it to the next slide? So as I kind of alluded to, we do coaching as our primary offering for customers, but we also have these free events and other things that we do, like small group classes on different topics. We actually have a number of essay classes, and I'm actually doing a class myself on building your recommender prep packets in a couple of weeks, maybe next week. So you can check those out on the site. And then we do partnerships with college clubs. So if you're in the presidency or you're in a club and you want to partner with Leland, we'll give you discounts. We'll give you access to these coaches. So a number of things. Our goal is to help you reach your goals, whatever those may be, whether those are career or educational goals. Today, obviously honed in on deferred MBAs. And the last thing I wanted to mention is Leland Plus, which is a new offering we launched a couple of months ago. It's become really popular for deferred MBA applicants. I've built a bunch of content and video courses, and we have interactive materials. We have templates. We have coaching discounts, some for the coaches even on this call. And we have free swag once you get into your top program. So highly encourage you to check out Leland Plus. You can subscribe for we've tried to make this as cheap as possible. We also do office hours with coaches live. So it's a great way to kind of get started. Though nothing will obviously replace working with a coach one-on-one, but it's a nice way to supplement it. And I think with that, I'll kick it back to you guys. Excited for this panel. It's gonna be great.
Awesome. So we're going to just do a quick deferred MBA overview. So for those of you that don't know what deferred MBA programs are, essentially what they are is they allow final year undergraduate and master's students the ability to apply to top MBA programs in that final year. The application process is very similar to what the traditional MBA application process is, and we'll talk about the different components of the application in a minute. But if you get admitted, you can defer your matriculation for 2 to 5 years. And so it allows you the opportunity to lock in going to a top business school early on in your career. You go and work for a couple of years, and you have that flexibility of going and enrolling within that 2 to 5 year window. And it's a really great opportunity for these schools to lock down high potential candidates. So which schools offer programs? Most of the top MBA programs at this point offer it: Harvard, Stanford, Wharton, Kellogg, you name it. So you can see a lot of different logos here. And it's a great opportunity to shoot your shot at a top business school if that's something of interest. Why should you apply to deferred MBA programs? It's a no risk shot at applying. So if you don't get admitted, admissions committees actually encourage you to apply later on during the traditional cycle, and they will not penalize you for that. Provides a ton of career flexibility. For context, I went to LinkedIn post-graduation, felt like it was a safe offer in big tech, but also had this nudge or hunch that I wanted to go into entrepreneurship. And I was able to take that leap or that risk and have that flexibility to do so and join a startup because I know that I have business school in my back pocket. So that's kind of a real life example of what flexibility it provides you. And it's also a career boost early on. It provides you the opportunity to connect with current students and also tap into the alumni network. So the moment that you get admitted to one of these schools, you can start to reap the benefits of what that school has to offer. And then, as mentioned, if you don't get in, you'll learn a lot through this process and can think through the next couple of years what it is that you would do differently to improve your candidacy. So tons of benefits to applying to deferred MBA programs. And essentially what I tell everyone that has any interest in attending business school, you should definitely apply deferred because 2 shots on goal at a top school is better than 1. And then, as mentioned, there are a lot of different components of the application process. Here's kind of a list of the different things that you'll have to complete in order to apply. So these top schools require the GMAT or GRE. You have to think through your application strategy. Each school requires 2 letters of recommendation, have to write a couple like school specific essays, write a resume, talk about your awards and honors, extracurriculars, et cetera. And then in the case that they do like your candidacy and they want to learn more, you get invited to interviews. So a lot of different components. It takes a lot of work to execute and do this well. And that's where a coach comes into play, is they understand what it takes to put together a really competitive application and can help you navigate each component to help you become the most competitive applicant that you can be. So with that, highlighted a bunch of the different parts of the application process. Many of you are currently in it, but interested in hearing in the chat which part seems the most daunting. GMAT, essays, GMAT, yeah. A lot of GMAT and test prep, as well as essays. And I would say that those are usually the most common things that people stress out the most. And thankfully we have GMAT and GRE tutors on Leland that can coach you. And we also have those MBA admissions professionals that have that experience and can help you as well. Recommendations is also a piece, and we'll touch base on a lot of those components today. So now we're going to move on to the expert panel. This is where we're going to loop in our experts, get a lot of their insight on the hardest parts of the application and the ones that people get the most tripped up on. So really excited to dive in. And to kick things off, we're going to start with our panelists' top tip for applying to top deferred MBA program. So maybe we'll start with you, Ben, if you want to start with your best tip, and then we'll pass it to Amy, and then Maya, you can be the next one up.
Yeah, sure, man. There's so many tips. If I could, I don't want to be trite, but I think starting early is so important. You really want to put forward a super good, compelling application. And I've seen the full gamut of people who start, a year and a half in advance. God bless that kind of preparation. It's pretty remarkable. But I think if you start, with a month or 2 left, it just really puts the onus both on you and your coach, but really on you as someone who just wants to kind of figure out, even in the first place, like, why am I applying? Like, what are my primary motivations? Why am I doing this? Like, where does this fit into my life? No, I don't think it's late to start now. It just happens to be one of my biggest tips. And I always say, when it comes to writing, like, write a really bad first draft. Like, write a terrible first draft of your essay, and there will be kernels of truth there. So I'll stop there, but I think start early and just begin the process is my biggest thing. Putting things off just really makes it tough.
I totally agree with what Ben said, especially the part about writing a bad essay. I think that's great advice. Also, don't worry about the word count. That's what I'll add on to that for that first draft. My tip is to kind of piggyback on what Andrew was talking about in terms of taking risks. I think that that's for deferred applicants and for your application, that can be a really interesting thing to hone in on in terms of what you want to do with your career in the next couple of years. If you do have ideas around doing something that's potentially, a little bit outside of the comfort zone, I think that admissions committees would really encourage that for deferred applicants in particular. So I would encourage you to kind of, explore that option and to, potentially use that as a theme in your essay.
Those were great tips from Ben and Amy, and I would definitely echo what they said. Just to take a step back a little bit, I think the process in general can feel a little bit daunting, a little bit stressful, and I think it's important to make sure that you don't self-select yourself out of the process, to have confidence in yourself and recognize that your experiences are unique and valuable, and use the application to showcase that. So I know it's stressful, but keep on going with the application.
Cool, super helpful. Just wanted to ask a quick follow-up. So Ben, you said start early. I would imagine that many people on this call are eyeing that April timeline, which is like 2.5 months away. Do applicants, if they haven't started or are just starting, do they have enough time to put together a solid application between now and April?
They're right at that window. I was literally I was typing in the chat. I think like 3 to 4 weeks is that time frame when you're like you're just too crunched. And we're not even talking about necessarily GMAT yet. Like I think if you can, like I was the worst possible person for preparation when it came to this stuff. Like I literally had a political office I was in at the time, and he announced he wasn't running for election. And one of my friends was like, "You should apply to business school." And I was like, "Okay, that sounds good." So I did everything in like 2.5 months. But I think that felt rushed, especially because I was like working really intense hours. I think you're definitely good for that time frame. My suggestion would be if it's like a month out and like you've kind of been noodling with the application but haven't really started, that might be tough. But I think this window is still very viable.
Cool. And just wanted to echo, I didn't start my applications until January and was on that tight timeline and I took the GRE, so I had to study for and take the GRE as well as put together my essays and everything together. I applied to 6 schools. And so I was able to manage it. And I think that all of you can too. But it's just like a nudge to get started and start taking it seriously if you haven't already done so and planning on applying in April. Cool. So now we're going to get into the nuts and bolts of the resume. I think like one thing that is a misconception is people just think they can submit the resume that they use to apply to their consulting job or the resume that they use to apply to investment banking. But an MBA resume is a little bit different than that. And so we're gonna get into that with these next 2 questions. And then also the resume is different from the traditional application cycle versus deferred because students only have like internship experiences or campus involvement. And so given that they don't have years of work experience, how can a candidate stand out in their resume specifically? And so maybe we start with Maya and then we'll pass it to you, Amy, and then Ben.
For sure. So I think just to clarify, at least through all the processes that I was in, like admissions committees understand that deferred candidates look different from experienced candidates. So it's not, you don't have to compare yourself to an experienced candidate by any means. But at the same time, I think structurally the resume will be kind of similar. It'll just focus on different things. So whereas a deferred candidate might talk about their leadership experience in their work, you can talk about your leadership experience when it comes to your extracurricular activities or your academics. And so just diving into those details of how you showed leadership in your school activities that you may not have talked about on your consulting or investment banking resume is a great place to start.
Yep, totally agree. I think the big difference for deferred candidates is you may have to be a little more creative in pointing out some of that leadership experience and just experience in general, that's not only going to be via a professional path. So yeah, thinking about extracurriculars, thinking about volunteer work, ways you've contributed in your community, definitely focusing in on more of the details around those things versus, maybe just an internship if that's kind of the extent of what you've done professionally.
Yeah, I think these are great tips. I'll just tack on that. I think one thing that I was told after the fact that benefited me in a number of like processes, whether it be recruiting or something like MBA, is consistency and kind of a progression or build in the types of things that you do. If you kind of spend like 3 months doing one random thing and then 3 months doing another random thing, like that is less compelling oftentimes to admissions offices than like, oh, you started like noodling on a startup. Oh, and then you went and like joined and you were a part-time consultant while you were at school. And then, okay, you actually started a little organization on campus that was dedicated to like that kind of progression along the same lines, I think is really powerful. Like not everybody can do that or put that together, and that's totally fine. But I think if you're asking for a way to boost through your resume because it's hard to put, you don't have 4 years of work experience, I think that's one pretty applicable method.
Awesome. And then I think it's important to talk through like the differences of an MBA resume versus like a regular job resume. Any insights on what should be included in an MBA resume that you would find in like a job resume, but like what are those true differences and what points of emphasis should you have in your MBA resume? I'll kind of open it up, and if anyone has any quick thoughts.
I'm happy to jump in. I would say that the biggest difference is, I think on a regular, just professional resume, people are trying really hard to represent the full scope of things that they've done. Whereas for an MBA application resume, it's much more about where you've had the most impact and what accomplishments you've had. So you really want to focus it on the things that you're good at versus trying to show everything you've ever done. And by focusing that, you're developing an area of expertise and you're really relaying more information to the admissions committee about what it is that you're good at. So yeah, just keeping an eye out for how you've had impact. Using quantifiable results is a really great way to be able to do that, using specific examples of the type of work that you've done and including a lot of detail. Those are things that I work on with clients a lot in order to make their resumes more useful.
Maya, Ben, anything else you'd add?
I think I would just add that I think the best practices for both are probably overlapping largely. Be concise, use, I would say, like whatever the simplest, clearest way to get your point across. Avoid crazy jargon. Say something such that a person who hasn't read it before, you don't have to, speak only in like, monosyllabic words, but like use language that is relatable and the point gets across in each bullet. I think for an MBA resume, it was mentioned, but leaning a little bit more heavily into volunteer and extracurricular, I think is another way to stand out. If you're applying for a sales job in the real world, like probably focus on your sales. But when it comes to the MBA, I think you can allow yourself a little bit more of a well-rounded resume.
Maya, any thoughts?
No, I'd really just echo what Ben said. I think the primary difference is focusing more on those extracurricular activities and volunteer activities that may not have been as relevant for a job application, but can really show how you have engaged with your community and demonstrated leadership in ways that you could.
Cool. I've seen this question come a couple of times in the chat, whether or not you should include your incoming role. I recommend doing so. A big part of the application is understanding what you're going to be doing between graduation and when you matriculate. And so showcasing where you're going or what you're going to be doing is a good thing to add on your resume. The only other point of advice that I would give is try to strip any like industry specific jargon out of your resume. It's often included in like a finance-based resume or a consulting-based resume. Maybe you refer to like different models or tools or different things that you use on the job. But for the MBA admissions committee, they may not understand that jargon as well as you do, given that you're in that specific industry. So we'll just try to strip that out as much as possible and make your resume as easy to digest as possible. Cool. So now we're going to move on to the letters of recommendation piece of the application, which is an extremely important part. As mentioned, most schools require 2 letters of recommendation, and it gives the opportunity for someone other than yourself to sell why you should be able to attend a top business school and why the admissions committee should admit you. So let's talk about the importance of it and where it fits in the broader part of the application. So Maya, any thoughts on like why recommendations are so important and how they fit in the broader application?
Sure. So since I'm going first, I'll start out by stating the obvious, which is that some things aren't credible coming from you or don't make sense coming from you, but look awesome when someone else says it. So something to the effect of Alice is in the top 1% of interns I've ever had in my 40-year career is the kind of thing that someone could say about you in your recommendation letter. And that's the kind of thing that can really help your application. I think it's also really important to go to someone who really knows you, even if they may not be the most senior person you've ever worked with, because sincerity coming from that recommendation letter can be really, really helpful for the admissions committee to get to know you better.
Cool. Any thoughts, Ben or Amy?
I think it's becoming so critical in the application if it wasn't already. There are so many smart people with great credentials, and the capacity for someone you've worked with to speak to that, it's essentially a completely separate but super important piece of evidence to suggest that like the things that you have done are in fact not just true, but like compelling in more ways beyond the line items that exist on the resume. And a recommendation letter offers, an outside perspective that can bring a lot more detail into 1 or 2 things that might exist. Like, let's say you had a consulting internship over the summer, like you can speak to a manager who shows how you went above and beyond. Like that's awesome. And I think it can take your application to the next level for sure.
I just want to emphasize the idea about prioritizing depth of relationship versus title. I think that's really important for recommendations. Like Maya said, you don't need to necessarily ask the person with the biggest title, but you want to ask somebody whose letter is going to reflect the fact that they work really closely with you.
Cool. Yeah, and that's was going to be one of the next questions is how do you recommend selecting recommenders for deferred MBA applications? Maybe we start with you, Ben, if you have any thoughts on how you go about that selection process. And then Amy or Maya, if you have additional thoughts, you can add them.
Yeah, I think it's people who you have significant work experience with or volunteer experience with. Best if you've worked with them for multiple years and they can speak to a combination of your character, your work ethic, and also specific outcomes that you've helped achieve and drive that are broader than yourself, ideally. I think that's primary. I would avoid, I've been in conversations with someone I'm working with right now, but I would avoid like a family friend, like with, I would completely avoid that. I would avoid someone like a partner on a project who like oversaw things, but never actually saw you work day to day and maybe stopped in the office. So it's similar to what was just being said. So it's people who can really speak to you and that have like significant time with you, I think is definitely best.
I would say for deferred applicants, I like the combination of a work colleague, somebody from an internship, a supervisor ideally, and also an academic recommender. I think that's a really nice pairing if you have, two people that you feel comfortable asking.
Just want to double click on that. If you were to select an academic recommender, what like qualifications would you be looking for to determine whether or not that would be a good idea or not? Is it that you took their class? Is it that you did research with them? What would lead you to ultimately selecting an academic recommender?
So I would say same theme as before, where it's depth of relationship. So the closer you are to somebody, if it's, you know, a professor that you worked with one-on-one, if you did research, if you did an independent study project, something like that, that would be an ideal choice. Or if it was somebody who you took their class, but you spent a lot of time with them one-on-one, you know, you really built a relationship, that's definitely the best choice for an academic contact.
Cool. And then Maya, given that you are a Harvard, Stanford, and Wharton deferred admit, do you maybe want to just talk about your personal experience selecting your recommenders, if you'd feel comfortable just sharing maybe who you decided to pick and how you went about that process?
For sure. So I think what Ben and Amy said was really great. And, you know, credit to Amy's advice. I also did one academic and one work-related colleague. I think the other thing that I thought a lot about was what I already was able to cover in the rest of my application, and was there another facet of myself that wasn't covered in as much depth that I wanted to highlight. And so that was also part of how I thought about recommenders is, you know, is there a project that I worked on that, you know, hasn't really been covered that much in the rest of my application that someone else could speak to?
Awesome. And then Ben and Amy, I know that you've had a lot of successful deferred, well, all three of you, but I know that Ben and Amy, in this last cycle, you had a lot of successful deferred applicants. Deferred MBA admits at Harvard, Stanford, Wharton, et cetera. Do you mind sharing maybe a couple examples of like who your, not specific names, but who your past clients have selected as recommenders, just to give some of these people an idea of who they might select?
Yeah, I mean, the person I worked with last year that's going to go to GSB, she had a person from her consulting internship over the summer who was her direct supervisor. I think direct supervisor is always great. And then she had someone, she started a venture capital organization on her campus to help fund, basically it's like a female-led investing. And she had the person who was her academic supervisor for that speak to like her ability to like actually begin something, take initiative, onboard people, grow a small organization, and hand it off really professionally to the next group who is going to take it over. And it still exists today. So a really good, I think, pairing of recommenders. And we talked through a number of options, but like after a couple of discussions, it was pretty clear that those two were going to be the standout ones.
And I had someone who, you know, asked a supervisor at an internship, which, you know, I feel like is sort of a default, not in a bad way, in a good way. I think the admissions committees are looking for someone who played that role. But then, you know, I've had a lot of conversations around this too, where people may have multiple choices that they're juggling for who to ask. And yeah, I think it's really interesting when, well, we spent a lot of time talking about if there is that academic person, right? And again, I think the person I worked with last year used someone who they had done a specific research project with. So it was a faculty member that they knew really well. But also volunteer activities, I think, are important not to overlook, especially if it's a really significant volunteer activity. I had somebody who started a series of summer camps for children. And so he had someone who knew him in that capacity write his recommendation. And that was a really nice compliment to what the person who knew him in a more professional lens had to say. So it's important to consider sort of the whole scope of what might work for you. Awesome.
All really good thoughts. And just want to echo again, choose the recommenders who are going to fight for you to get into business school. They need to write really amazing things about you to win over the admissions committee. And so that depth of relationship is so important. And then we've talked a lot about selecting who it might be. Now that you know who your recommenders are, how do you go about preparing them to write your letters of recommendation? What type of material or things do you provide them so that you can ensure that they write powerful things about you? Ben, do you want to kick us off, and then Maya, and then Amy?
Yeah, it's tricky, honestly. First off, like mentally, it's a kind of a queasy feeling, I feel like, in your stomach when you're like talking to someone, be like, hey, like we work together. Like, do you mind saying like super nice stuff about me? That'd be really great because I'm trying to go to this awesome school. So that like beginning that conversation can be weird. I think the simple step is to be like, hey, like I had a phenomenal experience working with you. Like I would be, I'd be extremely grateful if you'd be able to write me a letter. I think it's often you kind of offer and say like, I am more than happy to be as helpful as humanly possible throughout this process. Can you let me know whatever you need from me? I've heard the types of things to provide are, a quick recap of the type of work that we've done together, and or like a few things I'm trying to highlight in my application character wise. And the reason I do that is it can be a little awkward if you're trying to be prescriptive to your recommender, who again is the one doing you the favor, and sort of like offer them the maximum amount of help, but also allow them to be the ones to craft it and leave the ball in their court a little bit. That's sort of my like tactical way of approaching it without you're probably going to have to do some work, but I think it's more like giving your recommender the space they need to pull you in where they need to. That's my approach. I'm not sure it's perfect. I'm sure there's other approaches, but that's mine.
Again, just to state the obvious, because I think it can be very helpful. Make sure you give the people that you're reaching out to enough time, and hopefully you know them well enough that you know their work style. Some people take weeks to respond to emails, other people reply in minutes. So make sure you contact them well enough in advance. Send them reminders based on what you know about their work habits. Of course, as Ben said, if it's been a long time since you've worked together, you might want to ask if they want to be refreshed on the nature of your work with them and the relationship that you have. But just make sure you give it enough time, send reminders, and make sure they know what the process is.
I would say I'm a pretty strong advocate for putting something in writing for your recommenders. I totally agree that you want to play off their personality, right? So if it's something that you really think is going to put them off, talk to your coach about that. But there are a lot of benefits to just providing something. This is the one piece of your application that you have no control over. So I like to suggest that you put together a little package for your recommenders so that they'll have something in front of them when they sit down to write their recommendation. And basically that package will just be some suggestions for things that they could possibly highlight that will be in line with what you're going to talk about in your essays and in the rest of your application. So it's an attempt to maybe have a little bit of influence over something that you typically, aren't entirely hands-off with, and also create some cohesion so that everything feels like it fits together nicely.
Yeah, all really good thoughts, and want to echo what Amy said. So when I applied, I did prepare some documentation for my two recommenders to give them a sense for what schools I was applying to, what the schools actually looked for, what questions would they be asked. And then I understood my impact a lot better than my internship manager 2 years previously, or a year and a half previously did. And so I included a couple of like my unique skills and unique impact that I made on their team to bring that back to remembrance, so that they kind of had like a story bank of things that they could pull from to answer the questions. Want to emphasize that do not write the letter for them. That's like the worst thing that you could possibly do, given that there are a ton of other written portions on the application itself, and the admissions committees can suss out whether it's your writing or a recommender's. But there is a lot you can do to influence what's written, and that's preparing that package. So John dropped in the chat that he will be teaching a class on like how to prepare your recommenders. And I would highly recommend checking it out because it could help you a lot in navigating that process. So now we're going to move on to essays. As many of you stated, essays are very daunting. There's 3 different types of essays. There's the personal statement like essays. That's the what matters most and why Stanford GSB prompt, or what else do you want us to know about you, the HBS prompt. There's also this why this school, so why Stanford, why Columbia. And then there's also behavioral prompts that a couple of schools will ask as well. So these are the 3 different essay types, and we're going to dive into a couple tips on how to navigate each type of essay. So starting with the personal statement essay, that's the what matters most and why, and what else do you want us to know about you? How do you go about approaching this essay? Maybe we start with you, Maya, and then Amy, and then Ben.
Sure. I think the easiest way to start out is by doing some good old soul searching. And that's a process that can take some time. Really thinking about, why is it that you want to do this MBA? How is it going to fit into your career? And could it be an inflection point, between 2 phases of your life? How is it going to accelerate what it is that you want to do? And if the personal statement sounds like you're applying because you think it's what you're supposed to do, or you want to get another stamp because it's what people in your field do, the admissions department is going to see right through that. So it's really important that I think you understand on a deep and personal level why it is you're doing this. And if you understand that, your authenticity is going to shine through on your application. And that's what people want to see.
Yeah, I think it's really important to put that time in to do that soul searching, because that really is where you sort of discover, potential topics to write about. I like to ask my coaching applicants to fill out a long questionnaire. It's kind of long, and it's time consuming, but it's worth it, because it forces you to kind of put some stuff down on paper and get those stories out of you. And, I think it's a really nice lesson in the type of writing that your essays are going to require. So that's a really good place to start. And my favorite personal statement essays are ones that, not only highlight something, related to professional goals. That's not a requirement, by the way, but if that can be incorporated, I really like essays that talk about professional goals, but as a reflection of something personal. So if you have a story that marries those 2 things, those are my favorite for a personal essay topic.
Cool. And just one quick question, Amy. I know that you ask your app or your clients a lot of different questions. What are some of those soul searching questions that maybe just a couple, just to give people an idea, like what should they be asking themselves to try to get the stories or themes and things out of themselves?
Yeah. So some of them are obvious, right? Some of them are, what are your career goals, right? What are your short term? What are your long term? What are your hobbies? Things like that are just straightforward questions. But then the ones that I really like, that I enjoy reading when I get the questionnaire back, are the ones about, think about some defining moments in your life. Think about, family traditions. Like, these are the things that may not immediately come to mind when you're thinking about MBA applications, but by going through the process of forcing you to write down a short answer response, these are the things I think that sometimes inspire really awesome essays.
Awesome. Ben, any thoughts here?
I'm really enjoying listening to both of you, because we have 3 different methodologies for doing basically the same thing. Maya, I'm going to sum yours up tritely, but it sounds like a nice long walk on the beach with a close friend would do some of that initial work. Amy, you have a long questionnaire. I do a 90-minute essay workshop on exactly this, and I went to kind of wild lengths to build like this 50-page deck on basically how to kind of more or at least systematically like problem solve this, and like take on questions from everything around like what drives you to like what are some of the most formative events in your life, to like why do you actually do what you do, like what would make your life better if you could wave a wand, like what would be the types of things you'd want to build in the world. Like there are a lot of different questions that you can go at. Who do you admire, right? So I think all of that's really, really useful. I also think that it's extremely important to realize that this essay is meant to exude qualities about yourself without saying things per se very explicitly. So like a great essay, Amy, I like that you phrase it, which is like the professional things that you do aren't just because you're following some prescribed path. They're not just because you did them because you were told to do them since you were 4. You do them because you're actually driven by trying to change society, hopefully for the better in some way that you find meaningful. And oftentimes, not necessarily, but oftentimes like a lot of your upbringing or some, key events in your life personally help inform that. And I think great essays do a great job of tying those together, but also throughout the process, like being honest and reflective. Like what are the lessons you learned at each stage as you kind of stumbled through really your life? Like I find a lot of those essays to be filled with a lot of humility and frankly surprise. And it's really enjoyable to read. And I think that's a huge part.
Yeah, I think the goal that you go for with this essay is how do you make the admissions committee feel something? And how do you make them feel that if I don't accept Andrew or Ben or Maya or Amy at this time, I may never see a Ben, Amy, or Maya or Andrew again. And so it's a really hard goal to get at, but sharing personal experiences, your professional experiences, things of your family, culture, being vulnerable, those are the things that are ultimately going to make the AdCom feel something. And that's what you're ultimately shooting for with this essay. And then just quick plug for those of you that weren't here at the beginning of the event, if you sign up for Leland using this link, Erica will also drop it in the chat. We will email you a $25 Leland coaching credit, which can be used for many of the things we've talked about: resume reviews, preparing your recommenders. We're now talking about essays. Our coaches are equipped to help you brainstorm, outline, draft your essays. So highly recommend signing up so you can get that credit. And if you've already created an account, feel free to email us at support@joinleland.com and we'll send it over. So that's just quick note if you weren't here at the beginning, so you can get access to that awesome deal. And now jumping back, this is where we're going to round out the event. So we'll take some time to answer this question. How do you recommend approaching the why this school essay? These schools know that they're amazing. So what is it that you include in those essays to show your deep interest and also win over the admissions committee? I'll just open it up if anyone wants to jump in.
I'm happy to jump in. So this is the homework question, right? This is the question that requires that you do your homework. So you know, there's no way around it. You just have to dig in and, you know, get really deep into the school's website, look at all of their offerings, look at their curriculum, look at their, you know, centers for research, look at their faculty and things that you can point out that, you know, again, not only emphasize why the school is great, but are a reflection of what you want from the school as an individual. Those are the things that you want to highlight here. So, you know, specific activities that are unique to what you want to do in your career, things that are really appealing to you as an individual. That's going to help tell the admissions committee more about you while also showing them that you've done your research. So that's what I would say you need to do for this kind of question.
I really like this question. And Amy, you made me start thinking about, like, there's kind of a few like levels to this, at least the way that I separate it. Like first is like level one, maybe like 3 levels. Like first level one, like, does your essay like pass like the Turing test? Like, is it alive? Like if you can substitute Harvard for every place that you have Stanford, your essay is not good enough. It's not detailed enough. It's not actually explaining why you want to go to school. You have a vague understanding of the school and you're just clearly just wanted to apply. Like that's great. But that's the first stage. It's like, is it alive? Stage 2 is like, okay, you've done a lot of research and you know a lot of the details about the things that exist on the school. And stage 3, I would say the one that goes a little further, that I think takes you from sounding like an applicant to sounding like an alumni, is what are the specific things that are at this school that are speaking directly to your narrative, the things you've written elsewhere in your application, in your personal statement. Ideally, you can also try to get in touch. I don't want to guarantee anything like this, but like try to get in touch with other alumni who have literally like gone on similar paths to you. But that aside, I think really do the research and like understand each component of the value prop. If you just list a bunch of like flagship classes, like you just talk a little bit about touchy-feely and then a little about lead labs at Stanford. It's like, okay, like anybody could have written that essay with a little bit of research, but like, how do you take all that research that's like Amy was just referencing, and how do you tailor it to who you are and why you actually want to go to the school?
Yeah, I think that's great advice from both Ben and Amy. One of the things that I think is a good way to try to get to that last level that Ben was talking about, and he touched on it briefly, but reaching out to alums to try to understand the character of the school. At lots of these places, you can learn roughly the same things. They have very similar, in many cases, very similar programs. But the characters of all these schools is going to be very, very different. And it's also a good way to understand whether or not that character fits with your personality. It's a good way to understand what kinds of schools you should be applying to. So talking to people, I think, is a great way of learning that. And I guess just more broadly, remember throughout this process that you can talk to people. When I was applying, I didn't really talk to anyone, friends, family. It didn't even cross my mind to look for a coach. But these people are all here to help you. And they can often provide insights about yourself that you wouldn't have thought of. So definitely recommend reaching out to people, especially maybe alums from your school.
Cool. A couple of things I want to echo. Talk to alums and ask them this question. Ask them why they decided to go to Stanford or why they decided to go to Harvard. And that will give you a good sense for like what it is that they're interested in or what they're taking advantage on the campus. And that'll ultimately help you shape why you want to go to the school. So that can be super insightful. Another thing that I want to really echo that pertains to not just the why this school essay, but also the personal statement essay is that Ben kind of mentioned is don't recycle your essays too much across schools. Many of you are going to be applying to Harvard, Stanford, Wharton, other top programs. And it's okay to use some of the things, but don't like take your Harvard essay and go and submit that for your Stanford essay or vice versa. Each school essay requires a certain level of customization. And these admissions committees know that there's a lot of top programs out there and they can suss out, okay, this is the what matters most and why prompt, but they just like tweaked it a little bit. So try to be as authentic and genuine as possible and do real research on that specific school and put in the time for each school specific essay to show that you're genuinely interested in that school, and try not to recycle essays too much or the exact writing. So just wanted to call that out. That's super important and can be sussed out really easily if you don't do that.
Andrew, can I just quickly add one thing, which is just like, I think one question left in people's minds is like, okay, reach out to alumni. That's great. What if I don't know any alumni? What if no one's in my immediate network? Is like immediately comes to my head, at least. It's like, I think one really good way to do this is like freaking use LinkedIn. It's one of the greatest search tools on the planet, but don't just spam 400 alumni from schools that you're interested in. Find people with similar backgrounds and drives and dig into their experience. 5 really high quality cold outreach emails is better than 200 bad ones. And I think the people that like there are truly like, there's nothing less appealing than getting a 1 on your LinkedIn and just being like, oh, it's just spam. But if someone's written a really thoughtful email, like I will give them the time of day. Like I will like, I don't know you, I've never met you before. It makes no sense in some respect that I would answer that. But if you've written a really interesting, thoughtful email, my thinking is someone did that for me. Not only do I want to pay it forward, but you just sound like a great person. You've said a lot of things that are similar to me. Awesome, right? Like it makes for a much more compelling outreach. And I think like to do that is, it requires some time, but I think it's worth it.
Awesome. Thanks, Ben. And yes, LinkedIn is a powerful tool, so use it. Awesome. Well, we've learned a lot from our amazing panelists and wanted just to give each one of them a huge thank you. Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Maya. You guys have been awesome and have shared a lot of amazing insights that each of the applicants that have joined us today can apply to their applications. And if you're interested, each one of them offers one-on-one coaching on our platform. As you've heard, they've all had a lot of success helping deferred applicants navigate this process. And so if you are actively applying or thinking about applying in future cycles, definitely reach out to these coaches and they'll be able to help you along the process. And then lastly, just a quick plug for Leland Plus. This honestly, I'm clearly biased, but having gone through the deferred process myself, this is one of the best deferred MBA. The best ways to prepare for your deferred MBA applications. We put a lot of effort and time into creating the materials and the resources such as office hours and questions. And so highly recommend signing up for Leland Plus. This is a really good chance to get some guided direction through the process. And then lastly, just wanted to say thank you to all of you for joining. Really appreciate it. And good luck with the application process. We're here to support you along the way. Thank you.